on how do we ensure that early college can be a post-secondary success strategy. Love that there is Halisha Love in the chat. Keep it coming. As you know, early college is unique in that it requires deep partnership across K-12 and higher ed. And I'm really grateful that this panel will bring these perspectives together today. But before we do that, I do want to just sort of share some quick information about OneGoal and our organization, particularly for those who are joining us for the first time. OneGoal's vision is that every student will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspirations. This is incredibly important, given that only 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree. That is compared to 67% of their peers from high-income areas. Our mission is to lead the movement to transform post-secondary advising and support so we can reverse those outcomes and that narrative. We work with communities across the country primarily through two types of partnerships. The first is OneGoal, our daily class for high school juniors and seniors, with an extra year of support during the transition to post-secondary. Just like math and English are taught during the school day, we believe post-secondary planning also should be taught and supported during the school day. And we know that teachers and school staff can be supported to effectively deliver that curriculum and that content and support students. Second, our OneGoal Leadership Network is a program that provides expert coaching and community of learners for school and district leaders. And together we work with them to build and strengthen the systems and the structures that will lead to increased post-secondary outcomes and close equity gaps for their students. This year, we'll reach over 13,000 students in OneGoal classes across the country, and we will partner with over 40 districts across states like Illinois, Massachusetts, and we're very excited to talk about the work we're doing in Boston Public Schools, Kentucky, Michigan, and others through our OneGoal Leadership Network. That's a lot. We're going to share a link to our website. We encourage you to learn more and engage and stay connected with us. So now that you know a little bit more about OneGoal, I want to get us into today's conversation. And we really want to make sure that the webinar itself and the conversation we have addresses the things that matter to you. So we're actually going to start with a question for the audience. Given your experience, what are some of the benefits and opportunities that early college programs offer in preparing students for success beyond high school? And I'll take a moment. I think that's dropped in the chat now. We would love for you to respond in the chat. What do you see as some of the benefits and the opportunities that early college programs offer in preparing our students for success beyond high school? Thank you, Monique. Yes, self-confidence. Less debt, absolutely. Cheaper college, yes. Shorter time to degree. Exposure to higher, yes, thank you. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you all for jumping in. We're seeing some great responses. And all of these responses resonate deeply with our experience supporting early college programs in Massachusetts. The data in Massachusetts is clear. Early college works. Our partners at the Massachusetts Alliance for Early College have published some really great recent data that shows the impact locally. We'll put a report in the chat now if you want to dig in and see what that impact looks like. But we know it works. And we also know that from supporting programs across the state, it takes intention, it takes attention, and it takes a lot of hard work and partnerships that requires deep levels of thought and care. I'm excited because I believe our panel will demonstrate that today, and we'll create an opportunity to ask questions about what makes it work and how do we do even more of it. Additionally, as we were preparing for this time, we thought it would be really helpful to engage and ground in some of the leading research on dual enrollment in early college. There is generally widespread agreement that advanced coursework, dual enrollment, early college can be powerful opportunities for increasing post-secondary access and success. The research does also indicate important practices to ensure the impact on enrollment, persistence, and completion, especially for students who are historically underrepresented in higher ed. I also want to note that while this webinar is focused on early college, because in the context of our work in Massachusetts, early college differentiates itself from dual enrollment through a robust state-led designation. Other states have similar initiatives, some of which are considered dual enrollment. So those terms can kind of go back and forth. John Fink, who will kick off the webinar and share some of the research he and colleagues have led at the Community College Research Center, can share more about the language used to describe these efforts across the country and what the research really says about the impact. In the meantime, if you want to learn more about early college in Massachusetts, we will also drop a link in to Massachusetts Early College Design Principles in the chat, and you can also explore that site. Has a lot more information about the early college program in Massachusetts. But with all that said, I'm very excited to turn it over to John Fink to help us set the stage for what is possible and what is at stake with early college and dual enrollment initiatives. John is the Senior Research Associate and Program Lead at the Community College Research Center at Teachers College, and will spend the next 10 or so minutes really walking us through his research and some of the things that they've found. So thank you, John, for joining us and for sharing all of this.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. Thanks to OneGoal and colleagues from BPS for inviting me into the conversation today. I'm going to sort of give a high-level view of dual enrollment and its many terminologies nationally, as well as what we're learning from studying how these programs can be redesigned or revamped to better advance a purposeful pathway into college and career opportunity, particularly for the students who are being least well-served in that high school to college transition. So in the next slide, let's just sort of take a step back even further and think about all the ways that high school students or students before they complete high school are getting some exposure to college coursework, et cetera. And it's important to note a couple things. I'm going to be using the term dual enrollment as like an umbrella term to capture any sort of arrangement through which a student before they complete high school is getting college credit through a partnership with a post-secondary institution. Everything from just taking 1 or 2 courses like I did. I took like an English 101 course as part of my high school experience to the full-on early college, high school, immersive, intensive experience on a track for an associate degree by the time students finish high school. So it really captures such a wide range of experience, but broadly, I'll just call this dual enrollment. It's important to note that the sort of outside of the early college high school model, sometimes we call a la carte dual enrollment, dual credit, concurrent enrollment, just the course taking is pretty large. It's sort of like coming up to 1.6, maybe getting closer to 2 million high school students every year, getting up to the scale of advanced placement, which is closer to 3 million high school students. Important to note that that's the number of students taking the courses, and then which is fewer students are taking the exam, fewer students are receiving the qualifying score, of course. So I think the bottom line is that these are very widespread in large programs when you're talking about dual enrollment writ large. So on the next slide, just want to sort of go over a couple of the publications I'll be talking about that you might be interested in to give this broad view. Our research at CCRC, we call dual enrollment equity pathways, and we're really sort of studying this framework, deep framework for improving and strengthening the potential of dual enrollment with a real focus on community colleges leading that efforts in partnerships with their K-12s. But we put out a couple of publications recently. First, just sort of like an overview of dual enrollment and what we know from the research. And second, a research brief that really compares these different ways that students are getting early college acceleration, AP, IB, early college high school, CTE, dual enrollment, et cetera, and thinking about like what are the sort of advantages or disadvantages from thinking about this as an on-ramp into college and career opportunity, specifically for underserved, underrepresented students. So a couple of resources to share, but I do want to just start by saying like there's been a large growth of high school students taking some form of dual enrollment coursework. This is looking over the last 20 years, and most of this expansion nationally has happened at community colleges. In the community college sector, we don't see trend lines like this too often going up, up, up. And in the next slide, I just sort of pulled out Massachusetts. You can see that in most states, including Massachusetts, this is sort of following that national trend. Not sure what happened in 2013 there, but you see there's sort of like an upward trajectory. And when you have this growth of dual enrollment at community colleges, at the same time, we've had a declining share of older adult enrollment students. You can see in the next slide that nationally, about 1 in 5 community college students is a high school student right now, which is just sort of a wild statistic to think about. And in some states like Texas, Indiana, Iowa, Idaho, it's pushing 1/3 or 40% of community college students are high school students. So this is a very large, growing, significant population for community colleges. In the next slide, I'm we're showing basically school districts across the country, and the darker blue meaning more of your high school students are taking dual enrollment courses. And you can see that dual enrollment is very widespread geographically, particularly in more rural and middle of the country areas. And that's a contrast to the next slide, which shows AP course taking. So you can see in that previous slide, the AP course taking is concentrated more in the coastal or urban areas. So it sort of draws a little bit of a contrast to that other major type of coursework. So in the next slide, if you just sort of like click through these four animations, I just want to highlight that as researchers, as a field, we've been studying the effectiveness of these programs for over 20 years. And in terms of what we know about educational interventions, this has some of the strongest and most numerous numbers of studies that have documented dual enrollment in its many sort of formats, having positive effects, like you all said in the chat, on high school outcomes, college enrollment, and college degree completion. And these were sort of summarized in a What Works Clearinghouse report in 2017. Some of the strongest evidence is through randomized trials of the early college high school models, which typically focus on underserved communities and really kind of get students into and through college attainment. So we know that these courses work well. Lately, our research has been really focused on, well, how can we make them work better and for more students? And in the last sort of screenshot of a study here is one of a recent set of research that's looking at what's the benefit of taking these dual enrollment courses for students who might be falling behind academically, but can kind of turn it around, have a positive experience that benefits them, where they're supported, they build their confidence. And, for that subset, this is looking in Texas, huge gains compared to their matched peers in terms of college enrollment and degree completion. And similarly, evidence we've done in Florida shows that things like getting math out of the way through dual enrollment with enough supports in high school has really strong benefits, not just for college enrollment and attainment, but enrollment and persistence in STEM majors in university. And that we found that the effects are like driven by Black and Hispanic students. So all of these really positive things that we could see the potential. And so the question we've been asking is, how do we make it work better? So that's an important question, because in the next slide, what we show is, nationally, one of the phrases that you'll hear a practitioner use is that these are programs of privilege. And this really reflects a persistent challenge in these programs nationally, that Black, Hispanic, multiracial, English learners, students with disabilities, and other groups are underrepresented among dual enrollment course takers when you compare to just who's enrolled in secondary school nationally. In the next slide, I show this for Massachusetts public schools, which I will say, you don't always see this in many states, that as a state, when you compare, especially looking at Black students, Hispanic students, there's closer representation with the school population in this most recent data year from 2020. Men are generally underrepresented when you look within these groups. And I'm not showing it here, but this looks a lot different for AP courses, with Black and Hispanic students in particularly underrepresented there. But I do want to point out that the bottom two, students with disabilities under IDEA, as well as English language learners, you see this in most places, pretty big gaps in representation. So the real question is, how do we address these programs of privilege, which is what our research is focused on. Another question in the next slide, that we're focusing on access for whom, but also access to what. And at CCRC, we've been studying these comprehensive student success reforms in the community college sector called guided pathways. And this really got us curious about, what does it look like when the sort of pathways and plans are extended to this large group of high school students taking the courses. And it addresses this other issue we hear around random acts of dual enrollment, or access to what. And so in the next slide, these are three of the motivating questions for our deep research, which just, what does it look like with community colleges extending these guided pathways reforms to their high school populations? What can we learn from early college high school models, which we know are very strong, but are limited in scale by design, and that could be further scaled to your sort of a la carte or more casual dual enrollment course taking? And then how does this build on what we already know about effective and equitable dual enrollment practices? And that's what led us in the next slide to our sort of deep framework, which we released some publications on in the fall, describing what we're seeing from guided pathways colleges with really strong results for Black and Latino and low income dual enrollment students. And I'll just sort of describe in the last couple of slides what we're learning from this framework as a way to kind of get into our discussion. So the first thing I want to emphasize on the next slide is that what part of bringing in the guided pathways reforms, what we're learning is that what is it leading to? Well, it's leading to high opportunity post-secondary and career pathways, meaning direct entry to a university towards a bachelor's, entry into a community college transfer program that is a structured transfer program designed with the credits not just going to transfer, but apply to that bachelor's major. So there is an opportunity sort of stratification in the transfer programs. We want students to be in well-designed transfer programs at the community college. Or it could mean entry into a workforce program leading to a high wage, high demand career direct to a community college. So we've sort of studied what these four components of the DEEP framework are. And in the next slide, I'll just sort of highlight that what we've seen from colleges implementing guided pathways with strong results for these for underserved groups in dual enrollment is that there are just real intentional efforts around outreach to underrepresented communities, communities of color, to specific schools like Title I high schools that may not have as many robust dual enrollment offerings, to build partnerships there, connect to parents, and get students ready to be successful in these courses, and getting the word out early, like in elementary and middle school, to make sure that the courses, are mapped to college degree programs at local universities and community colleges that students want to go to, and that they're maybe even embedded into the typical or default high school plan, especially like in CTE programs where students might otherwise be tracked out of the college pathway. Let's put the college courses into the career pathways. That colleges, working with their school counselors and high school counterparts, are providing advising for these students. So if you're hitting 15 credits, college credits, why if the college isn't advising the student, why not? They're accumulating a lot of these credits because they're going to need to have those conversations around planning. And finally, that support area is really about keeping the standards high for quality. These are college courses, but then what are the additional supports for students to be successful and rise to the occasion and feel that confidence boost of like, I took a really hard course and I was successful at it. The final thing I'll just say is that, these deep practices, we know there are additional investments needed to provide advising supports, to do the outreach. But if you just sort of skip 2 slides, I want to talk about the sort of incentives here, that for colleges specifically, there are increasing incentives to invest in this approach to dual enrollment, not only because it's the right thing to do, because it's a way to grow the supply of future college-going students, especially when you look in communities where students are questioning the value of college, and college enrollment rates are declining and low, like 50% of high school graduates going to no college after high school. And we also see this for K-12 schools too, that having a really strong kind of like dual enrollment program that saves students time and money in college, this is a feather in the cap that high school principals are talking up, they're getting competitive with each other, and they're really sort of drawing in interest and enrollments to their own school. So this is what we're learning, and I'm so excited to kind of get into conversation with colleagues from OneGoal and BPS about what this is looking like in Massachusetts.
John, thank you so much for sharing all of that. And I think like particularly that DEEP framework resonates so much with the work of early college in Massachusetts, and sort of if folks click through the design principles and the designation criteria that we linked earlier, you'll see a lot of resonance between the outreach, alignment, advise, and support with some of the design principles, and just like really thinking about what makes these programs work for our students and how do we get all of that right, or as much of that right as we possibly can to maximize it. So thank you for that, and bringing in some of the questions about quality and scale, which I think are really also critical, and we'll dive into some of more of that later. In a moment, I'm going to bring on the rest of our panelists, which I'm very, very excited to do. Before we do that, I know that folks may have to hop and before this ends, but we want to make sure we're sort of gauging your interest in staying in touch with OneGoal. So we're going to launch one more poll really quick for 30 seconds. Just ask you to complete that quickly. Who wants to stay in touch? Yes, maybe, or not now. That's okay too. But we want to make sure we're capturing that so that we can do the continued ongoing work of partnering and staying in conversation with you all. So we'll take another 15, 20 seconds, and then we will dive in. All right. Thank you all for doing that and completing that. We really appreciate it. Partnership is at the heart of our work. And we also know that like no one can do this work alone. And so we have to do it together and learn from one another and engage. So we appreciate you all and we look forward to staying connected with as many of you as possible. I am now excited to sort of turn to our panel and put the work that is happening in Boston Public Schools in conversation with a lot of the research and the learnings that John shared. And so just to sort of bring in some of our practitioners to sort of dive into how the vision of early college can come to life on the ground in districts and schools. So in particular, as I said, we're going to dive into the amazing work happening in Boston Public Schools. For those who don't know, Boston is the state's largest district, currently serving over 46,000 students, 14,000 of whom are in one of their 37 high schools. For the last several years, OneGoal has had the opportunity to partner with Boston Public Schools as they've dramatically grown their early college offerings. They currently have 8 early college high schools, and in the last year, doubled the number of students enrolled in an early college program. As you can see, that sort of huge uptick on the right. They're also seeing real impact in terms of the students served and the seamless post-secondary enrollment. So the chart on the bottom left shows student subgroup enrollment in early college versus their high school peers. And then you can also see the seamless enrollment rates where early college students are enrolling in college directly after high school at a rate higher than their district and higher than their peers at their high school. And so we're seeing some really great positive results there and excited to come alongside the district and then bring in some of the practitioners to share some of their work for this next discussion. So as we transition, I want to bring on our 3 additional panelists. As I introduced earlier, we have Halisha Lytle, the Early College Director at the Boston Community Leadership Academy, Greta Schaff, Dual Enrollment Coordinator in Boston Public Schools, and John Baumgarten, our OneGoal Post-Secondary Leadership Coach. So welcome, y'all. Very excited to get us into our Q&A. I will have prepared a bunch of questions that I would excited to ask you, but I know that there are folks that also probably have questions as they come up, so I will encourage participants to still add questions into the chat, and we will try to get to as many of those as we can. But Halisha, I'd love to start with you. So you are the Director of Early College at BCLA McCormick, and you are working with students every day. John shared the impact of dual enrollment strategies across the country, but I'd love to hear from you about your early college program and what are you seeing in terms of impact for the students that you serve?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having me. So one thing I'm noticing in our program in terms of impact is students developing their college-going identity. So we're seeing students really take pride in saying that they're college students almost immediately from joining the program. They're really excited. They're walking around the hall saying, I'm a college student, which is really powerful because for a long time when I was teaching, I would constantly hear students say, oh, college isn't for me. College isn't for me. And then I would always say, like, how do you know? You haven't even been exposed to it yet. So it's really powerful to hear them actually claiming that they are college students now as being part of the early college program. And also students having the opportunity to take college classes on campus and utilize the resources there, get to be on campus, see the other college students. It really makes them feel like they belong in college and they can envision themselves there in the future. I'm also noticing academic confidence, an increase in students' academic confidence. I had one student who currently is taking college algebra, and she said to me, I want to give up, but I won't. And I thought that was really powerful. This is a student who went into her college algebra class thinking that she was really good at math. But after the first couple of weeks of the class, her confidence was kind of shattered. But instead of letting that feeling of defeat overcome her, she really continued to show up to class on time. She took notes, she completed her homework assignments, she was reaching out for extra help. She just was really rising to the challenge. And she's continuing to make significant progress in the class. And so just her experience of being in the early college program and taking these rigorous classes will make it so that when she does go to college and she's in rigorous classes, she has the collegiate skills necessary to succeed. She knows the supports that are available to her so that she can succeed. And I also hear teachers saying that many of the early college students are more confident and they're willing to take academic risks, they're participating more, and are just more confident in their classes. Another impact we're seeing is that students are learning the college norms. So most of our students are first generation. So learning the collegiate skills like emailing professors to let them know that they need extra time on an assignment, accessing their accommodations, self-scheduled exams. It's really helping to just demystify the college process for students. And lastly, in terms of impact on families. So family involvement is a big part of the early college program. And we recently heard from a mother that seeing her daughter participate in college classes and complete college classes while she's still in high school encouraged her to go back to school. So the mother is currently taking community college classes right now because of the work that her daughter is doing in early college. So I thought that was like a really beautiful moment and really a testament to early college and the impact it can have on generations.
Well, first of all, I am so glad we're recording this, because if anyone's ever like, why do we do this? It's that. Everything you just said is that. And huge props to you and your team for creating the opportunity for students, but also all of the support that we know comes along with it, because it does require a ton of hard work at all levels to make these opportunities as transformational as you just shared. One of the pieces of the work is the partnership, and it truly is a partnership between higher ed and K-12. And I'm wondering if you could just share a little bit about how you've worked with your partners at UMass Boston to really ensure student success, and so that the student, even if they're getting hit with college algebra, they keep going, right? And they have the supports in place to do that.
Yes, definitely. So we work with UMass Boston, and they have a dedicated early college team that has been amazing to work with. They come to BCLA frequently to support our students during the students' work blocks, and they've built really strong relationships with our students, and students really view them as trusted adults who are supporting them through the program. Like, students will get excited when they see Dan from UMass Boston pop into class. Dan the man, like they get really excited. And so we really appreciate their partnership and their willingness to be hands-on. I also have weekly check-ins with Dan, the Associate Director of Early College at UMass Boston. And this just gives us an avenue to exchange valuable information about how the partnership is going and what is needed to ensure the success of our students in the program. In addition, I meet with the professors at least once per month to discuss what's going well and areas of growth so we can troubleshoot and make necessary adjustments to the class. UMass Boston also has a director of curriculum and instruction for their early college program, which has been great, Sarah. And she has provided professional development opportunities for both high school early college support staff and university professors. So this has been great because it bridges the gap between college expectations and high school expectations. And we're actually able to work together with the higher ed professors to become more aligned on the high school side. Sarah was also kind enough to use her math skills because she was previously a math teacher to run a math boot camp for our students before they started their college algebra class. So students knew what they were getting themselves into, they knew the expectations, and she just did a great job of setting the foundation for them. We also work with UMass Boston's Ross Center for Disability Services to ensure that our students with diverse learning needs have access to the accommodations they need at the higher ed level. And the Ross Center has been great about holding info sessions for our students and families so they really understand the difference between accessing accommodations at the higher ed level compared to K through 12, because it is a little different. And the last example I'll share is just the collaboration with UMass Boston advisors. The early college team at UMass Boston has coordinated with the advisors to provide support to our early college students. So the advisors come in and the students become familiar with the process of advising, and they see how it is a resource to help them succeed in the program and when they attend college. So again, it makes them feel more part of the community, the college community, because they're actually having like, oh, I have a college advisor from UMass Boston who's here to support me as well.
And I think it continues to reinforce I'm a college student, as you said, which is so beautiful and is such a big part of like actually seeing that as part of who they are and their identity. So I appreciate that. And I think part of what I hear and a lot of what you're sharing is the partnership work is not like a set it and forget it. It's about the ongoing engagement. What is coming up? How do we respond to the needs? And so like the math boot camp as a response to the needs that students have in order to access success in the math class, right? And I think just always knowing that like that's part of the work of the ongoing partnership and really centering students and what they need in order to find success in the program. And huge shout out to you and your colleagues at UMass Boston for engaging in that work and making sure it's really meeting the needs of students. So I would love to now kind of bring Greta in to share the larger district perspective. And so I know like hearing Felicia's stories of success and the work that she's doing, but we also saw earlier that Boston Public Schools has grown early college really rapidly over the last few years. I'm curious to sort of hear from your perspective how the programs have grown, why the district has prioritized early college, and sort of how that is situated into the larger district strategy.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Adam. It's great and it's fun to be in community with this lineup of presenters and everyone on the call that's from all over. So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, early college is new. It's pretty new to the education scene in Massachusetts, but I do believe it's here to stay. And we've been learning and adapting a lot from our peers, both within the state of Massachusetts and beyond. Our flagship early college program and partnership is just 5 years old. And over the last 5 years, our early college program has been steadily or rapidly, as that chart showed, growing in our district. And I think that's partly because of its strategic design and research-backed practices that make it really appealing and relatively feasible for schools to implement as a post-secondary success strategy. And in Boston, I do think it's important to make the distinction that we have both the district-wide dual enrollment programs, the a la carte DE offerings that John was talking about earlier, and we have a growing number of early college high schools that are designated by our state Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. All of our early college designations currently are by school, not by our district. And that data slide before showed that we have 8 early college high schools with 5 college partners, and they all have career-connected pathways and elective coursework opportunities and are aligned to our MyCap system, My Career and Academic Plan system. So students get to explore those majors and careers meaningfully and talk a lot, right, in a number of different spaces with a number of different people about what it takes and means for their life, what their post-secondary plans are. And then just to talk a little bit more about the portfolio itself, we also have 2 more high schools right now that are in a district-supported year of early college planning. And we have a early college incubator where we're testing and thinking about an early college consortium model for English learners. So lots of exciting things happening, lots of growth, lots of learning. But to end and kind of summarize here, I think that question of how we've grown is a really important one. And you took the words right out of my mouth, you and Felicia, right? It's partnerships and alignment. So when I think about alignment, there is a lot of alignment between our district's early college strategy and our vision of the graduate. So I think in many ways, our early college programs like operationalize our vision of the graduate. It makes it a reality for more of our students. It gives students the knowledge to be more prepared for a college career in life. It equips them with more skills to understand themselves and others. It helps them to adapt through changes and challenges, right? Those are all elements of our vision of the graduate, and they are experiences that our early college students are having every day, right, on the ground, or mostly every day. I hope they get a day off too. We all need that. But that alignment is really key. And then just to, again, to kind of call out and underscore the partnerships piece from the district perspective. This model is not possible without really strong partnerships. And I would name that it's more than the partnership between the high school and the college. It's between the high school and the college and the district and your community organizations and your industry partners. And there's more, right, that I'm forgetting. But it's a really complex ecosystem, but a really robust one. And if we're not functioning well together, the students feel that, right? The students feel that deeply. So as a district, we've been really trying to nurture those partnerships with MOUs and data sharing agreements and co-planning spaces, professional learning, and just continuous dialogue about what we're seeing and experiencing, and ultimately making sure we're all on the same page, or at least the same kind of, chapter with what our expectations are of these programs, because I really think, and like we've seen from quantitative and qualitative notes, they're a game changer when we implement them with fidelity and quality and shared purpose.
Thank you for that. And I think all of that summarizes a lot of the opportunities. But I am curious from where you sit, what are you sort of seeing as some of the biggest barriers to impact at scale? And so that we were able to really grow this work in the way that you were talking about. And how are you thinking about how to respond to some of those challenges and those barriers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, we've talked about how we know and believe that early college works, and we also know it needs to reach more of our students. So I think that for us, has been a barrier that we're working through. It's currently, early college programs are currently reaching about 4% of our BPS students this school year, and we know that will continue to grow as our programs themselves grow to scale. But that, strategic and really thoughtful growth is important to us. We know we need to reach more young men. We know we need to reach more English learners. We know we need to reach more students with disabilities. And one example at the district level of how we're responding is with our early college incubator that I mentioned. So that has equipped us with some really targeted planning supports to design that early college consortium model for English learners. And I saw a question in the chat about how it's funded. So our incubator is funded through our Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed, a state grant. And there are also opportunities through DESE for our schools to get planning grants when they're in that year of planning, and then support grants as well. But there's definitely an ecosystem of funding as well. So it's not just the state grants, it's also philanthropic support and school general funds and the like. But just with our incubator, I want to speak to some of those, practices and how we're working through some barriers. We are working on, everything from intentional or differentiated coursework to on-ramps and the wraparound student supports and co-teaching models and professional opportunities for our faculty that are, teaching courses designed for English learners and designed for our multilingual learner community, and one that really elevates and celebrates them. We're working with our district's Office of Multilingual and Multicultural Education, and as a very specific example, taking college syllabi and aligning it to WIDA and ELA standards. So getting these two systems to speak a little bit more to each other. We're creating early college classroom look for and visit tools, and working with our faculty on both sides around asset-based and culturally sustaining and student-centered pedagogies. So yeah, we know we have a lot. That's just one barrier, right? We know we have a lot of work to do, and the context we're working within is always shifting a little bit, but we are trying to tackle those barriers, we know, and apply the deep practices, right, that John was talking about earlier at scale.
Love it. Well, thank you for that, and for the work that you all are leading on that. I'm gonna kick it back to Halisha for a question. I will say one more plug for add questions to the chat. We will have some time to get to those as well. But Halisha, I know one of the things that you knew you really wanted to focus on this year, and you've done a lot of work on, is in addition to ensuring the appropriate academic sort of supports were in place to, but also to really create, as you were talking about, the sort of college and career exploration and exposure opportunities for your early college students, as well as the whole school. And so I'm wondering if you could share some of the ways you're building some of these wraparound services to support students' success in their classes, but also like their planning for the future, and how you're thinking about that as part of the early college experience.
Yes, definitely. So we understand that early college is more than just the classes that students are taking. So we're working hard to build a strong post-secondary culture at BCLA through various events and opportunities. For example, this year we brought students on college tours, including UMass Amherst, UMass Dartmouth, Framingham State, and we'll continue to expand this next school year. But we really tried to choose schools that were affordable for our students and also that aren't super accessible for them to get to. And through this experience, again, some of the students who were like, college is not for me, then when they got to campus and they got to see campus life and college life, were later like, oh, if this is what college is, then I can do it. I think I can do it. And so again, those little anecdotes, but they really are so powerful when students are being exposed to these opportunities and experiences. In addition to that, we hosted a school-wide career day last month, which brought in over 70 professionals from the community to speak with our students. Students were able to learn about various industries, including real estate, architecture, law, cosmetology, STEM, and healthcare. We really tried to focus on careers and industries that we know that our students are interested in. Professionals shared information about their workplace, their specific job duties, and the education and skills that are required to succeed in those careers. So students really appreciated that, and they got to hear the professionals' trajectories, their hardships, the obstacles they had to overcome to get to where they are today. And I think that was really powerful for our students. In terms of our classroom support for early college, UMass Boston has done a great job with student support this year. They've provided us with undergrad and graduate student tutors who come into our early college classes and support our students. It's been instrumental in our students' success. But not only are the tutors willing to support the students during class, but both of the tutors in our college algebra class offer students tutoring via Zoom after school or in person on UMass Boston's campus after school. So whatever the student needs, they're really accommodating and meeting students where they're at based on their after school schedules. So the student support piece is key. Also, we have an early college advisory. So once a week, students can choose to join the advisory for the school year, but if they just know this week I'm really struggling, we have the early college advisory that they can pop into and get extra support from one of the school's math teachers or a UMass Boston tutor who is also in the room during that time. And during the support block, so the days that the professor is not in class, so Tuesdays and Thursdays, it's me there or another support staff. We give students time to complete their assignments because they'll tell you all day, I'm busy, I'm overwhelmed, I have so much work to do. But those Tuesdays and Thursdays are dedicated time for them to get their college work done. But also we do college and career readiness activities like college essay support, financial aid review, just talking about the FAFSA, talking about college fit factors, things that they're not normally exposed to and they don't necessarily know about college. So those Tuesdays and Thursdays give us time to do that as well, so students can start thinking about their future and their college plans. And in terms of students who, not every student is going to finish the class during the semester. Some students decide early on that, hey, I have too much going on, I need to take a break, but I still want to be part of the program. Or some students have too much going on to the point where they need to withdraw midway through. So we did create a support plan for students who took a semester off or withdrew and are looking to re-enter into college classes. So we want to be intentional, and we want students to be intentional about identifying the challenges that prevented them from being successful in the previous course, and create a plan for utilizing supports. So in case they find themselves struggling again, so that they can be successful and stay in the classes and the program. So those are like some of the main supports we're offering.
Well, it's a lot. And I think, it highlights just sort of the depth of the planning and the ways in which you are showing up to support students. And I know that you are saying we in a lot of cases, but it is also you. And so just highlighting that piece of like the many hats you wear in the work and what it takes to do that. I want to sort of on that note, turn it over to John Baumgarten on our team, who is one of the post-secondary leadership coaches supporting some of the early college high schools in Boston. John also supports schools outside of Boston in Southern Illinois. But John, one of the things we often talk about is that developing and sustaining a strong early college program requires sort of school-wide or system-level change. We often say early college requires school-wide transformation. In your experience coaching and supporting early college schools on the ground, can you share some of the ways that you've partnered with our leadership network schools to deepen their early college impact, and in the process, think more broadly about post-secondary readiness at the school level as they are taking on early college and building that out?
Sure thing. Thanks, Adam. I will say just that, we have the opportunity to work with our leadership network schools. And what that looks like is oftentimes we come in, we do needs assessment, we figure out where they're at, what's the future state of where they want to be, and how do we get there. We have the great fortune to work with Alicia and Greta and team because, this work is not easy, right? It takes many, many partners to actually do the work. And I think, as you mentioned earlier, if the school is not aligned in the vision and how that's going to transcend across multiple departments, right, with multiple players, then a lot of things can get lost in the mix. And so part of our work is to really get clear on what is that vision, who needs to be involved, where are we working towards, right, and start to ground ourselves in data. What are the outcomes for kids? How are they advancing through a system? So we take really targeted care to thoughtfully partner with schools and kind of understand where are their pain points, and then kind of work together collaboratively to advance towards like a more holistic sense of post-secondary readiness. It's been a real pleasure to work with Greta and her team, because I think, oftentimes you don't necessarily see the district potentially go all in. And as Greta mentioned earlier, right, that this is a key priority for BPS, and they really put up time and energy and resources to help Halisha and all of our other schools, right, who are doing this work, because it's not easy. It takes lots of thoughtful coordination and partners working together to advance. And I'll kind of wrap it there because I know we got some great questions as well. So I don't want to necessarily cut off those questions, but that's kind of a snapshot of our work with our leadership network.
No, I appreciate that. And yeah, I do want to get to some of the questions that we've gotten. There's one that I think everyone could answer a flavor of. It's probably more geared towards Halisha, but it was a question about what are some of the data and indicators you are tracking to sort of towards success. But I'm also would just open that up to Greta if there's stuff at the district level, and John Fink if there's things that you all are looking at across the country as some of the key indicators of success.
Yeah, I definitely think in terms of data that we're tracking, we're looking at student retention, of course. We want students to stay in the program. So we're looking at who's staying in the program, who's withdrawing from the program. We're looking at students with disabilities in the program and seeing their performance and making sure that they get the supports that they need. We're also tracking SEI students, so our multilingual learners, and we know that, again, they're underrepresented in the early college program. And so we're working with our guidance team to figure out how can we target recruitment for SEI, but also make sure that they have the supports that they need to be successful in the program. I know eventually when we have seniors, we'll be tracking FAFSA completion to see like, okay, who now that they're in the early college program, are they actually applying to college at a stronger rate than some of their peers who are not in the program? I know those are some of the things that we're tracking.
Yeah, thank you.
And then I would just add really quickly. So like one practice we use is each of our schools, and this is, co-managed, but mainly managed by our Office of Data and Accountability. They're called CCLR data folders for each school. So college, career, life readiness folders. And those are populated like very frequently with information and data that we're collecting from the IHEs, and that's where all those data agreements and MOUs come to play. We're collecting the rosters, the grades, kind of live and really looking at, so we do data dives every semester with each college partner. We're doing a round of data dives with each partner to look at those and where some of like some technical discrepancies are, but then also like, what questions do we need to ask of students, right, and faculty and the teams that are implementing these programs. And we have early college data profiles, by the district and by the school that's looking at some of those high school graduation, immediate post-secondary enrollment, post-secondary persistence, some of those more long-term outcomes. I would love to see I would love to see us focus a little more on like some community like outcomes and self-efficacy, because there's like a lot of richness there in like the dual enrollment student experience. So we're working on that too.
Love it.
I'll just add that from the college perspective, we worked with colleges in Texas to look at like data for improvement. And I think many colleges can do this, but looking at the measures of access disaggregated by student type, but also by high school, and just thinking about all the high schools in your service area and which ones are you serving and which ones aren't you? And like, where's the potential for growth, particularly among like the Title I high schools that maybe have lower take up, if that's the case. Let's look at what are the courses, and then what are the momentum measures? How many students are getting past English or math, or hitting a certain credit threshold? And then crucially, like, where are they going to college after high school? How many are coming back to us versus elsewhere? And there's a lot of untapped potential with the National Student Clearinghouse data that can be really useful in tracking to see not just completion, but just like who's not going to college, and what are the top destinations for those who are.
Yeah. Thank you all for that. And I know we are coming up on time, which is like painful to me because the hour flew by, and I feel like we could continue this conversation for another hour easily. And I know that we didn't get to every single question, and I apologize for that, but do hope folks will stay in touch with us, and want to end with just extreme gratitude and ton of respect for all of our panelists for joining us, but also for the work you were doing every single day.